It was a routine flight, a clear day, a plane climbing steadily into the sky, cruising at 35,000 feet. Passengers settled into their seats, some gazing out the windows, others lost in their books or earbuds. Flight 202, a commercial airliner bound for a destination hundreds of miles away, was expected to be just another uneventful journey, the kind most people take for granted. The pilots, calm and composed, were preparing for a smooth, uneventful flight. But no one knew it would be their last. No one could have predicted what would happen in the next hour. Even the seasoned crew who had flown this route countless times would be helpless against the storm that was about to hit. At 3:17 p.m., the first sign of trouble appeared. A small warning light flickered on the flight deck, the kind that pilots had seen before. Minor glitches, something to be ignored for now. But then, a strange sound crackled over the radio, an unsettling static that interrupted the quiet hum of the cockpit. It was only a fleeting moment, but the tension it caused was palpable. The aircraft continued its steady ascent, passing through 30,000 feet and heading for the flight's cruising altitude. But inside the cockpit, something was amiss. The pilots, though experienced, were both sensing it. Something wasn't right. The first officer glanced nervously at the instruments, his fingers hovering over switches as his co-pilot tried to maintain calm, mumbling reassuring words. "We've got this," he said, though neither of them fully believed it. But then the next sound came, a loud, shrill alarm, the kind pilots dread. "Stall warning," it was called, a sound that could only mean one thing. The aircraft was dangerously close to losing its lift. A feeling of weightlessness overtook them. The plane jolted as if fighting against an unseen force. In that instant, all the calmness, all the preparations, seemed meaningless. The cold, undeniable reality sank in. The aircraft was in trouble. They had only a few seconds to act. The stall warning blared incessantly, its harsh tone cutting through the cockpit like a knife. Panic gripped the crew, but years of training kept them from freezing. The captain, a veteran with over 20 years in the air, was quick to react. He yanked back on the control yoke, attempting to regain control of the aircraft. The plane was fighting him, struggling to stay aloft as if it was slipping into a dangerous abyss. Outside the cockpit, passengers remained oblivious to the unfolding crisis. The seatbelt signs were still off, and the flight attendants continued with their service, unaware that the aircraft was descending at an alarming rate. The passengers, many of them enjoying the comfort of the smooth ride, had no idea that in the cockpit, every second was a battle for survival. "Pull up! Pull up!" The voice of the ground proximity warning system echoed in the cockpit. It was a robotic, emotionless voice, but to the pilots, it was a relentless reminder of their dwindling time. The captain pushed the yoke forward, trying desperately to counteract the downward plunge. The plane's nose dipped, then surged upward. The turbulence intensified, shaking the aircraft violently. It felt like the plane was being torn apart by the wind, its wings rattling, its body creaking under pressure. The first officer's eyes darted between the instruments, his heart pounding in his chest. The altimeter was plummeting faster than he could process. A few hundred feet, a few hundred more. The numbers were falling too quickly. They were running out of time. "Captain, we're losing altitude." The co-pilot's voice trembled. But the captain, though his hands were slick with sweat, remained focused. He barked orders, urging the first officer to flip switches, adjust settings, anything to help regain control. But with every passing second, the plane seemed to fight back, refusing to listen. The stalls grew louder, more frequent. The aircraft's engines roared in protest as they struggled to keep up with the rapid descent. In the cabin, confusion started to spread. Some passengers began to notice the change in the plane's motion, the unsettling jolt, the unnatural tilt. A woman in seat 21B gripped her armrest, her knuckles white, her face pale with fear. Others screamed, the tension in the cabin rising as the realization sank in. Something was wrong. Back in the cockpit, the captain's face was pale, but his voice was calm. "We're going to make it, just stay focused." But even he knew they were running out of options. Then came the worst sound, a terrifying grinding noise as if the plane's structure was being pulled apart. The pressure on the plane's fuselage was too much. The stall was becoming impossible to recover from. Their altitude continued to dwindle, and they had mere seconds before they would hit the ground. "Brace for impact," the captain muttered, but there was no certainty in his voice. He knew the plane wouldn't recover. In those final moments, time seemed to stretch, dragging on as the aircraft hurtled toward the earth. The clock was ticking. The pilots fought to the end, each one silently hoping they could bring the plane back. But there would be no miracle. Seconds later, the unimaginable happened. Flight 2102 slammed into the ground. The impact was deafening, followed by an eerie, bone-shaking silence. Then, the haunting sound of twisted metal and fuel igniting filled the air, followed by an explosion that could be heard miles away. The plane, once a symbol of human achievement, was now nothing more than a burning wreckage. The survivors, if there were any, were trapped in a living nightmare, engulfed in flames, struggling to breathe, but with only moments to live. In the aftermath, authorities scrambled to gather whatever remained of Flight 202, hoping for survivors, but bracing for the worst. The wreckage was scattered across miles of barren land. It was nothing like they had imagined. For days, rescue teams combed through the debris, searching for clues, searching for anything that could explain how this tragedy unfolded. The world waited in silence, as the answers remained hidden in the smoldering ruins. Then, days later, investigators retrieved the black box. The flight data recorder was damaged, but miraculously, the voices of the pilots, their final words, were intact. Forensic teams listened intently as the last minutes of Flight 202 played out in real time. The pilot's voice was strained but still clear. "We're fighting at it, but we can't get control." As the investigators continued listening, the tension in the cockpit was palpable. The captain's breathing was heavy, his words coming out in quick bursts. "We're too far gone, we can't recover." There was no panic in his voice, but the raw desperation in those final moments spoke volumes. And then, the chilling silence as the stall alarm blared one last time. The last words of the first officer were equally haunting. I can't do it, Captain." A plea for help, one that would never be answered. The final moments were played back again and again, and with each passing second, the tragedy became clearer. The aircraft had entered an irrecoverable state, and no amount of training could have changed the outcome. The descent had been too steep, the plane's control systems had failed, and there was nothing anyone could do. But there was one last revelation hidden in the black box, a small mechanical failure, one that, had it been detected earlier, could have changed everything. A piece of equipment that was meant to warn the crew earlier failed to do so, and that perhaps was the pivotal factor in their doomed flight. The stall warning system had malfunctioned, and the crew was left flying blind in the final moments, without the crucial information they needed to recover. While investigators pieced together the wreckage, the world mourned. Passengers, crew, and families were lost, leaving a hole in the hearts of those left behind. But even after the black box had given its answers, the final truth remained painfully clear. There are some moments in aviation where no one can stop the inevitable. The final 60 seconds of Flight 202 would haunt the aviation industry forever, a reminder of how quickly the calmest flight can turn into the most tragic of disasters. And though the black box provided answers, it also left the deepest question unanswered. What if?